the other tape ended rather abruptly, and I'll continue on here just rambling. Don't know much what I'm going to talk about right now. I haven't given it any thought, to be frank. Your mother and I have been watching the other tape, watching your mother's rendition of her life experiences, and it's just coming up on what I taped yesterday when it's time for the news. So your mother is in watching the news now, and I think I'll, for the time being, terminate this. I feel a coughing spell coming on here, and I'll be back with you, back again. I'll ramble on here for a few more minutes. Then there's a TV program I want to watch. Matlock. I like to watch Matlock. And so I'll try to bring you up to date on what I did from the time we finished high school. Graduated from Wilkinsburg High School after a great struggle. In fact, I had to, when we moved down to Virginia, I didn't have enough credits to graduate. I had to take one semester of English there in Washington Lee High School in Virginia, and then send those credits back to Wilkinsburg to get my diploma. Well, I did eventually graduate from high school. When I moved to Virginia, the job prospects were better there, and my sister Betty was working there for Senator Brown from Michigan. My sister Pauline was working at Garfinkel's as a buyer. My brother Bob was working at the bank there, 15th in Pennsylvania, big bank. I can't think of the name of it right now. So we packed up and moved to Virginia. We lived in Arlington on 13th Street, just off Glebe Road. I got a job in a filling station at Wisconsin and Q, a golf station there, working for Mr. Weber, who was the owner of the station. And I worked there at that station until, I can't remember whether he sold out or just what happened. Anyhow, changed hands, so all us old employees were let go. I ended up getting a job at a Texaco station. No, it was another golf station there, corner of Glebe Road and Lee Highway. Worked there for a short while and then got a job in a Texaco station just a block from the house, about 2 blocks from the house, on Washington Boulevard there in Arlington. And that made it much more convenient. And I was working there. I'd probably still be working in a filling station too. This friend of Pauline said that he thought I could get a job at the telephone company if I applied. So I thought, well, shucks, that sounds like a good deal to me. So I applied for a job at the telephone company. And went to work there as a cable splicer's helper. And that was in 1940, I believe, 39 or 40. And I worked there as a cable splicer's helper. It was the splicer's name was Lusby, Dick Lusby, real fine gentleman. He'd been all busted up. He'd been working in the Navy Yard during or right after World War I. And he'd fallen off ship onto the dock, and he'd gotten all busted up. He had more stitches, staples, hinges, and things in him than you could shake a stick at. But he was one of the best cable splicers the company had. Unfortunately, he was left-handed, so was I. Well, when you're working in a manhole, installing a new section of cable, you have to drill holes to put the racks in, to lay the cables on. Well, there's certain holes that are extremely awkward, if almost impossible for a left-hander to drill with a hammer and drill. So he, being a senior man, guess who got that impossible job? I'd get that hammer and drill and start hammering. By the time I got the hole drilled, I don't think I had a bit of skin left on any of my knuckles. I just beat the hell out of them with that hammer, knocked all the skin off. But that was all part of the game. If I ever got to be a cable splicer and had a left-handed helper, guess who was going to get that left-handed drilling jobs? Not me. But eventually did get to become a cable splicer. In fact, we were advanced rather rapidly at that time because the war was developing and Washington, D.C. was growing like mad. Telephone needs were increasing rapidly, and the need for personnel was increasing rapidly. And the draft came along, and I was given an occupational deferment. I was Class A2. Occupational deferment necessary, and an occupation necessary to the defense effort. So I didn't have to worry about the draft. However, the friends of mine were going into the service, and next thing I knew, all my friends were gone, and I was left behind with the 4 Fs, and I didn't like that. Your mother wanted to go down to San Antonio to visit Aunt Maud, so when my vacation came up, while we took off, we'd saved our ration stamps so we could make the trip, gasoline ration, and we drove to San Antonio to visit Aunt Maud. When I got down there, San Antonio at that time had Randolph Field, which was called the West Point of the Air. It was the largest cadet training, aviation cadet training in the Air Force, or Air Corps at that time. So when I got there and saw those little things flying around in the sky up there, I decided that's what I wanted to try. So I went down to the recruiting office and I said, what do you have to do to get to fly one of those things? And he says, well, you look healthy, you're breathing, sign here. So next thing I knew, I was signed up for the Air Force. They gave me some exams, physical exams, and oral exams, written exams, more or less psychological exams, I guess. And I completed those, and he says, okay, right now we don't have any place to put you. You go home. You'll be notified when you're called, where to go, and where to report for your training. So, okay. We went home. And that was on May the 20th, this is when I signed up there in 42. I did not get called up until October 26th or 27th. I think I got called up 26th. I had to report on the 27th to Nashville. I don't remember just how that went now, but that's the material. It was the 26th, 27th of October, anyhow, that I left home for the first time in my life. Fred had already gone. He'd signed up for the Navy, and he got called up real fast. And he was already getting his training and everything, and I was still at home working for the telephone company. That kind of chaffed my butt, but I raised Cain with him for joining the Navy. I said, look, I said, you can walk 3,000 miles a darn sight easier than you can swim it. You don't have any sharks to contend with, and your airfield's always right where you left it when you're in the Army. But he chose the Navy, and he completed his training, got his wings in the Navy, got assigned to Pensacola there as an instructor. And the only time he ever flew over water is when he took his gunnery students out on a gunnery mission out over the Gulf. I eventually got called up and went all through my training, got my wings, ended up in the South Pacific, and the only time I was over land was when I was in the traffic pattern. The rest of the time I was over water. Strange. However, I got called up, and as I said, in October, went to Nashville, and we went through a whole battery of tests, written, oral, and what have you, there at Nashville to determine whether you're going to be a pilot, a navigator, or a bombardier. And believe me, I sweated that out. Because I didn't want to be a navigator. I didn't want to be a bombardier. I wanted to be a pilot. And fortunately, I had all the right answers, I guess, for being a pilot. So I went from Nashville to Maxwell Field, Montgomery, Alabama, to go through pre-flight training, 2-month course there. Then, on completion of pre-flight training, went to Americus, Georgia for my primary training, flying PT-17s. Then I got checked out and flew solo after 7 hours of flight instruction. And that's the thrill of your life when you get on that flight. The instructor, you land the airplane and taxi, and the instructor gets out and he says, okay, it's all yours, go for it. And you taxi out for that first solo flight. Nervous, happy, thrilled, scared. but it was great. I'll never forget it. And you really haven't flown until you've flown in an open cockpit airplane. Especially when it's cold. Well, I completed my primary flight training. At Americus, Georgia, and was sent to Cortland, Alabama for basic flight training in the BT-13, the Volt-T vibrator. The primary flight trainer was the PT-17, or the steerman. Then from Cortland, Alabama, I went to Columbus, Mississippi for my advanced flight training. And that was in July and August of '42. And then I got my wings, graduated and got my wings on the 30th of August, 1942, and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army of the United States. And upon completion of that, and I was sent to La Junta, Colorado for B-25 transition training. And that's when I first knew just what the heck I was going to fly. I was kind of hoping maybe I'd be flying P-38s, which is a twin-engine fighter, because during my advanced training there at Columbus, a few of us, select few, were chosen to check out in the AT-6 advanced single-engine trainer. And I was sent on down to Florida for some air-to-ground gunnery training. And but that wasn't to be. We ended up in the B-25s, and the air-ground gunnery there, of course, turned out was strafing and skip bombing targets in the South Pacific. But I will leave you at this point while I go watch my TV program, and we'll talk again. Have fun. December 31st, 1993, and the countdown has begun towards 1994. I wish I could say that this has been a memorable year as far as accomplishments have been concerned, but unfortunately I can't. I haven't done a thing worth commenting on, let alone bragging about. This year's been a slow one. I haven't done any bit of work to amount to a doodly-darn squat since, well, September, early October, something like that. Because of my condition, these aches and pains in all my joints have hampered me and made me rather lethargic. I've been getting little or no exercise. One of the reasons why I'm just decided to sit here and talk to you folks, since I'm incapacitated. I may as well take full advantage of that and at least accomplish this much. This time next week, I should be in the recovery room after the operation on my neck, on the vertebra. I They're supposed to remove either a couple of discs or a couple of vertebrae, I forget which. But hopefully, I should be on the road to recovery after next Friday and getting back to more like normal activities for a 74-year-old man. Lots of things your mother wants me to get done here. You can't quite see this stack of papers here that piled up on my desk that she wants me to get rid of before Diane comes in on Wednesday. There's another stack on top of the little cabinet here also that I need to whittle down. Man, there's stuff stacked all over this room. Don't know just where to put it. In fact, when it comes right down to it, there isn't much in the way of storage space left here in this room. But to get back to my story. I left you last night. I was at Lahaina, Colorado, completing my B-25 transition. Before I progress from there to the next assignment, I'd like to mention one thing about flying at Lahaina, Colorado. On our morning flights, we took off early in the morning, well before dawn. So, once airborne, I always headed west. I wanted to be in the vicinity of the Rockies when the sun came up. It's a beautiful sight to behold when the sun comes up and strikes those snow-peaked Rocky Mountains. Up there in the beautiful blue sky, sun shining brightly, the mountains reflecting back from the snow. Beauty to behold. The war is far from your thoughts at that time. You're just looking down on God's beautiful world and thankful to be alive. But so much for that. Went from Lahaina, Colorado to Columbia, South Carolina to get my B-25 combat training. I was assigned to a replacement training unit there where I had experienced combat pilots who had returned from combat to conduct the training and teach us neophytes how to fly in combat, what to anticipate. Of course, it's nowhere near what the real thing was like, but still, it gave us some experience in real tight formation flying and low-level flying and maintaining formation in turbulent air. I remember one flight we went on. I had been stood down for a spell. I don't remember what for. So I went back to fly this mission. It was my first one after being stood down. It was a little rusty, a little rough handling the aircraft. And flying in formation, low-level turbulent air, we were bouncing around like a cork on a stormy sea. I didn't realize, never even stopped to think about the effect it might be having on the crew until 5 hours later, we land and taxi into the parking ramp and shut down the engines. And as soon as we shut down the engines and the hatches were open, the stench from the back came wafting up front. Those poor guys back there had gotten deathly sick, and up there, cookies all over the place in the back of that airplane, filling the hatch and everything else. When the hatch was open, all that stuff went dumping out onto the ground. You know, I never saw such a white-faced bunch of crew members with green around the gills as my crew was when they got out of that airplane. But to give you an idea of what they were like, not a single one of them called up front and said a word or complained a bit. They just took the being sick in stride, did what they were supposed to do back there in the fuselage. Upon completion of my training there at Columbia, South Carolina, we got an assignment to go pick up an airplane at Savannah, Georgia, and head west. The first flight out of Savannah was to Abilene, Texas. It was a long flight. We would do a thorough fuel check on this flight to determine, get an accurate count on the fuel consumption, so any adjustments to be made could be made when we got to the air depot at Sacramento. So we tooling along and we get to Abilene. I call Abilene Tower, ask for landing instructions. They gave me landing instructions, so I let down and entered the downwind leg. I looked at that airfield, and as I start to turn base, I call them again. I said, Abilene Tower, this is 901, turning base from downwind. Am I over the right field? It looks awful small to me. He says, state your position again. So I told him my position again on base leg. He said, Roger, we have you in sight. You're cleared for landing. So I went in and landed there, put it right down on the edge of the runway because I was kind of heavy. I used every inch of that runway getting stopped. It was a short runway. And I taxi into the ramp, shut her down, and get out. I say, this can't be the right field. Where's all the Army facilities? And the guy said, oh, you wanted Abilene Army Air Tower. You should have called Abilene Army Tower. Oh, the stinkers, all they wanted to do was see a B-25 up close, so they didn't give me any correction and advised me that I was doing wrong. It kind of irritated me, but wasn't anything I could do about it. I didn't take on any fuel because I knew it was going to be real tight getting off the field because of my weight. Since I just had to go to the other side of town, I figured there'd be no problem. So I taxied out, got clearance for takeoff, took off, and used every inch of the runway taking off also. And flew on over to Abilene Army Airfield and landed. It was a brand new airfield and wasn't even showing on my maps. The only airfield that showed on my map was the one that the civilian field that I'd landed on. After we landed there, we stayed overnight at Abilene. Aircraft was refueled. And we took off from Abilene, flew to Phoenix, Arizona. Landed there, stayed overnight, and then left Phoenix and flew to Fairfield Susan Army Airfield at Sacramento. And there we landed the aircraft and got refitted for an overseas flight. We still didn't know which way we were going. We were given all our overseas gear, including heavy leather fleece-lined flight suits and flight boots. So we figured we stood a good chance we'd probably be going to Alaska or the Aleutians. But after a week there, they refitted us, took all the turret guns out, put them inside the aircraft, took all the bomb racks out, and filled the bomb bay with a fuel tank. And took about a week there at Sacramento, and then we fueled up, took off with our orders, sealed orders, to be opened after we passed the point of no return. So we took off and headed west. When we reached the point of no return, checked with navigator and engineer on fuel consumption and everything, and we decided we had plenty of fuel to get to our destination. Opened our orders. We were going to Honolulu and from there to the South Pacific. And we were to deliver our airplane in Townsville, Australia. So we continued on our flight, listening closely to those engines. It was out over the middle of the Pacific. There was no turning back now. We had to go on no matter what happened. But those engines ran beautifully, purred like a kitten. Or maybe you might say roared like a lion. Never heard a kitten purr like a B-25 noise. And we hit our entry point in Hawaii right on the button. And went on in and landed at Hickam Field, where we spent another week. Honolulu, while our airplane had that big fuel tank removed, bomb racks reinstalled, the guns reinstalled. Then we took off for Christmas Island. That was our first stop on the way to Australia. We landed at Christmas Island. Spent the night and took off after being refueled the next morning. And just as we were ready to go, one of the waist gunners noticed something strange. Back there was a rifle butt sticking out from underneath some blankets or something back there. I don't remember what it was now. So he pulls on that rifle butt, and there's a guard attached to it. And the guard had smuggled himself aboard a plane. He didn't want to stay there on Christmas Island. He wanted to go to the combat zone. He didn't want to spend a war there, standing guard on airplanes on Christmas Island. Felt sorry for the kid, but we unloaded him. And then proceeded on our way. Then we landed. I can't remember the order now in which they came. We landed at WWII, also at Canton Island. Remember, on Canton Island, there was just a little atoll with one tree that the people who were stationed there managed to plant. Had it flown in from somewhere, and they nurtured that tree like it was their firstborn child. And one night we spent the night there after refueling the aircraft. And they had a Monte Carlo night where we gambled, and they had that place thing rigged. I think that every crew that came through there got took. I guarantee we left there with less money than we arrived with. Canton to WWII, or vice versa, I don't remember which now, like I said. And we went to Nandi, and then Plains de Gates. Plains de Gates was in the Grand Island off Australia. What the heck? Can't think of it now, but that's immaterial. And then from Plains de Gates, went into Townsville, Australia. Each one of those stops we spent the night, refueled, and proceeded on to the next. And we landed in Townsville, Australia. And delivered our airplane. So we were in that airplane, flying that airplane from Savannah, Georgia, all across the United States, all across the Pacific, and delivered it to Townsville. And after, I think it seems to me we spent a couple days and nights there at Townsville waiting for orders and to proceed north into the combat area. And our first assignment was to Port Moresby in New Guinea, where we got another week's refresher training in combat flying. And then from there we were assigned to the 38th Bomb Group, 71st Bomb Squadron, stationed at Nadzab in New Guinea, which is about, as I recall, about 30 miles inland from the port of Leh on the east coast of New Guinea. And that's where I started my combat flying. And as I mentioned before about the excitement of your first solo flight, there's also the excitement of your first combat mission. Now, on the first combat mission, I flew as a co-pilot with an experienced pilot who was also the operations officer for the squadron. And he was leading the squadron on the mission that day. It was a target in New Guinea. I don't recall where it was or what the target was. All I remember is that when they started shooting at us, I swear I felt like I was sticking out like a sore thumb, that the Japs down there were shooting specifically at me, that was all they could see was me sitting there and weren't shooting at anything else. I was excited. I was scared stiff. I wanted to duck, especially when I saw the yak-yak. But where do you duck? Besides, I had to toggle off the bombs. That was a co-pilot's duty. So, you probably heard me mention it before, that I'd volunteered for combat training all the way through my flight training. Primary reason for volunteering was to find out whether I was a coward or not. Well, I found out real quick on that first mission. I was scared stiff. I never did learn to appreciate getting shot at. I guess nobody actually ever learns to appreciate that. You just pretty soon learn that that's part of the game. But after NADZAB, we flew a couple missions, staging out of Hollandia a couple times to hit advanced targets. That was after Hollandia was taken. Hollandia was one of the places that we bombed before, when I first got to NADZAB, rather. But when we left NADZAB, we went to BIAC. It was off the coast of New Guinea, about central New Guinea there. And flew missions out of BIAC. Hitting targets in western New Guinea and in the Halmahera group. Then we left BIAC and went to the island of Moritai. After it was taken, and all the Air Force had there was just a 3-mile perimeter with 2 airstrips. One for bombers and one for fighters. And there's a coral island. The airstrips were just coral airstrips that's shown up brightly and sparkled in the moonlight at night. We got to Moritai. We were just a short distance from the Halmahera group of islands, and Japs based there in Halmahera. Mordecai was one of the Halmahera Islands, actually. And I can remember that, I don't think it was for 63 consecutive nights. I don't remember now exactly. The Japs would come over and bomb our little 3-mile perimeter. They were fairly accurate. I think all they had for a bomb site was a string and a rusty nail, but it was pretty darn good. And they didn't come as a group. They just came one right after the other all night long, from sunset to sunup. And we had them cut off. Japs had the rest of the island. The Army was holding the perimeter. The Japs weren't getting any supplies in. So those Japs on the island weren't being resupplied. They didn't have anything to formulate a counterattack against us. And eventually, with the rest of the Halmaheras being cut off from resupply also, the Japanese aircraft missions fell off to where we were no longer getting any bombing, except for the occasional scattered one. We'd go over and hit those targets on the Halmaheras on the airfields there. But then we also flew up, hit Zamboanga in the Philippines, and also went after shipping in the Philippine Sea there. The only time I encountered any Japanese, we encountered a Japanese fleet that was making its advance towards Leyte to try to recover that island that they'd lost. And as we were beginning to make our run, B-24 heavies way up above us started making a bomb run on the fleet. And we tried to call them and reach them and get them to hold off until we could make our run. But we were unable to contact them. Consequently, we couldn't fly through their bombs. So we were directed to go hit a secondary target. And actually, we didn't even hit a secondary. We hit a tertiary target because the weather or some other feature precluded our hitting the secondary target. So that was the only time I saw any of the Japanese fleet. So we went from Mordecai then, after a landing on Luzon. Landing was made at yeah, that's right. Landing was made at Lingayen Gulf, and 9 days after they made the landing there and the Army troops moved in, they secured an airstrip there and laid down an area for us to fly into, laid pierced steel planking, PSP. And we flew in there 9 days after they made the landing. And you've never heard such a racket until you've landed on pierced steel planking. And it sounds like that runway is rolling up behind you as you go rolling down that runway. Noisy, clankety clank, crash, bang. But that's what we flew out of there on Lingayen Gulf. rest of my tour. From Lingane Gulf, we hit targets on the China coast, hit Okinawa, and looked for shipping in between. The one and only time I had an engine shot out, I got it shot out over Formosa. And I forget what target we were hitting. Of course, that's immaterial also. Well, I figured it was just some Japanese clerk had forgotten to unload his rifle while cleaning it, and the damn thing went off and hit me dead center in the oil sump on my right engine. Well, I was the first one to have an engine shot out over Formosa. And we received instructions to head out for the coast. And such a distance, I don't remember which now, and ditch the aircraft, and they'd send the rescue aircraft after us. Now we had, prior to this time, we had Air Force Dumbos, rescue aircraft, that would go right in on the target with us. But when we started hitting targets out of Luzon and north, we had Navy Dumbos. They just go to a certain point in orbit and wait to be called for a rescue mission. Well, I wasn't about to put a perfectly good airplane that was flying nicely into the drink. Checked my fuel, checked with my engineer and navigator. We figured we could make it home, so I called, said negative, I was not going to ditch, I was heading home. We figured we could make it. So then they acknowledged and said, okay, head for home if you wish. When you get in the vicinity of the Dumbo, check your fuel, and if everything looks okay, if there's any doubt in your mind, ditch it there and let them pick you up. So I said, Roger. We went from there. We got in the vicinity of the Dumbo, checked our fuel, everything was looking great. Engine was just purring away. And so I called in, told him we were going to proceed on. We still thought we could make it home without any sweat. They said, Roger, there's an emergency airstrip on the northern tip of Luzon. You can go in there and crash land there if necessary, if you feel that you can't make it. However, that's in Japanese territory, so be sure to take immediate cover after landing, and we'll send rescue after you. There. By the time I got to that point, I says, I'm heading home. I'm going to sleep in my own little bed tonight. I'm not going to land in any Japanese-held territory. So we flew that airplane, got in home there at Luzon, Lingane Gulf, with fuel to spare. Not a whole lot, but adequate. So that was my first and only experience with an engine shot out. I must have lived a charmed life. We go out on missions, come back, wouldn't be a scratch on my airplane. And both airplanes on either side of me would have all kinds of holes in them. This is one time I experienced a mid-air collision I'd always heard that a mid-air collision can ruin your whole day. And I found out real quick they were right. I was leading the squadron on a target on Formosa. I had a new pilot flying my number 2 wing position, which is the easiest position to fly. It was his first combat mission as first pilot. But I wasn't too concerned about him because he had more flying time. He had about twice as much flying time as I had. But it had been all back in the States as an instructor pilot. And hadn't had any combat experience. But still, I figured he was a well-qualified pilot. I didn't have to be too concerned about him. So, we get to the target area, and make a diving turn onto our target run for strafing and skip bombing. As I started my turn, I test fired my guns to clear them. And of course, all others did the same. And I checked my wingmen, just see how they're doing. Number 3 was doing all right. Check number 2, tilt. We were colliding. I hauled back on the controls, fortunately in time to keep from going in as a tangled mass of aircraft. Broke my climb at about 900 feet above the ground, and checked with the top turret gunner. Says, "What's the damage?" He said, "Well, we've lost our wingtip and about half our aileron on the right side, but otherwise everything seems all right." Everything was flying good. I had no control problems. I checked to my left. There was my number 2 man, sitting way up high at about 1,500 feet. And he appeared to have some rudder problems. Apparently, he hit my wing with his rudders and damaged them to some extent, but he was still flying. So sitting there at 900 feet over the target area, you're a clay pigeon. They can hit you with everything, including a kitchen sink. I'm not going to sit here and get shot down. So I told the crew, I said, "We're going on in." So I stuck my nose down, and we went on in, completed our bomb run, strafing, skip bombing, and then headed out to the coast. And as soon as we got a safe distance off coast, about 3 miles or so, I asked top turret gunner if he knew where our number 2 man was, because I still didn't see him. My number 3 man was still with me. And he says, "Well, when you started your run on target," said, "he turned right and headed for the coast." So I decided to pull a search for him. I turned the squadron over to the flight leader for the second flight, kept my number 3 man with me, and we pulled a search as long as we could, calling and calling, trying to locate that number 2 man, but we were unable to do so. Finally, the engineer and navigator said, well, we better head for home or we're going to run out of fuel. So we gave up the search then and headed for home. To the number 2 man. And